2, 1.
Good morning, everyone. I hereby call the Canada County Health and Human Services Committee to order. And commissioners, I believe you all got copies of the minutes. Are there any corrections?
I will make a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, a motion by Commissioner Nissen to approve and a second by Commissioner Amon. No more discussion. I'll call for the question. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same side. Passed unanimously. Also, you all received copies of the bills, and any questions or discussion? If
So
not,
move on the bills.
a motion by Commissioner Matson and a second by
Second.
Commissioner Nissen. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Passed unanimously. And now I'd like to call upon Director Jenny Lippert. And it's my understanding because of COVID that you are going to be our presenter here most of the morning.
Yes.
Most of the first agenda items.
That is correct. Yes. Good morning. The first thing I am here for approval of our Canada County Public Health fee schedule. So our public health staff do a number of different services that we provide to those within the community. We are looking at no changes to our current rates for 2021 as currently are presented here in the 2020 year. So you'll see you guys all received it in your Dropbox, but vaccination administration, we're going to keep that at $21. Our Manto vaccination, we're going to keep at $30. Our nursing visits, case management rates, interpreter rates, paraprofessional rates, those are all going to stay the same. And then our professional staff rates, again, we're keeping that at $55. Car seat training, I came before you and asked for that increase back in October, the 20th board meeting, so that will be for 2021. Any questions? Otherwise, I would look for a motion to accept and approve
Commissioners?
the public health fees.
Mr. Chair, I would,
Go ahead, Commissioner Emdek.
I'll second.
Okay, a motion by Commissioner Emdek, a second by Commissioner Matson. Any further questions? If not, I'll call the question. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Passed unanimously.
And then the next item on the agenda is the contract summary for our nursing services at Prairie Lakes Youth Programs. So this includes both their correctional and detention center along with the boys and girls group homes. We have a staff that goes and does nursing services at those locations. There are no changes for the contract for 2021. So all the same amount of number of hours that our nursing staff are present to support them, and then also no change in services for what we're providing at the correctional and detentional center. So
I have a question. You say there's no changes yet. I'm looking at this fee schedule and there's 70,000 proposed in 2021 and 54,000 in 2020. So are we just going to be over there more often or what does that mean? I'm looking at the public health fee schedule in the Dropbox.
yep. For the hour, are you looking at the hourly
Looking at the
rate?
box on the bottom, it says proposed 2021 for child welfare is $70,052, and current 2020 is $54,806. So,
Commissioner Nissen?
Yes.
Is this in reference to the grant, though? Is that separate, different?
Yes, so are you looking at the bottom, the grant? We're not to
Oh,
the child
okay.
welfare
Yep.
grant yet.
okay.
Yes,
All right,
we're just
thank
on the Prairie Lakes Youth Programs. So that will be staying at the $55 per hour, and then the $28 for interpreting services, and $27 for any clerical or support that we provide for managing any medical records.
I will move that now that I got it squared away.
No, that was a very good question.
I'll second that, Mr.
Commissioner Nissen makes a motion we approve. Do I have a second?
I'll second that,
A
Mr.
second by Commissioner Amon. No further discussion. I'll call the question. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Passed unanimously.
So now we'll get to the Child Welfare Juvenile Justice Screening Grant acceptance. So again, this screening grant provides state appropriated funds to support children's mental health screening, assessment, and mental health services that we provide to children in the child welfare and juvenile systems. So our proposed amount from DHS, this is a DHS grant that is distributed to all the counties within the state. It is increasing for 2021, so we're very excited about that. Currently, we get for child welfare $54,806. For 2021, we're looking at $70,052. And then for the juvenile justice, currently we're receiving $1,103. And the new proposed amount is $1,648. So I would look for a motion to accept this grant.
Also move, Mr. Chairman.
A motion by Commissioner Amman to approve. Do I have a second? The Chair, Corky Berg, will second it. Any further questions? If not, I'll call the question. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Passed unanimously.
So the last thing I'm here is to bring forward some stale warrants. And usually Carol will present this every year. She comes to the board to ask for approval to cancel these state-dated warrants. We get a list of outstanding warrants from Karen Anderson downtown from the previous year. Our fiscal staff contact everyone on the list and ask why they didn't cash their warrant. So we do go to all extremes to try to contact these individuals. We're requesting from the 2019 year to cancel the 1, 2, 3, 4 that you would have seen in your Dropbox. Questions?
I
Mr.
will
Chair,
make-
I'd move on canceling the warrant.
A motion by
I'll
Commissioner
second.
Emdek, a second by
think-
Commissioner Mattson. Any further questions? If not, I'll call the question. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Passed unanimously. Well, Jenny, just before you go, just a quick comment. I'm very impressed that you were able to keep the fees so low or the same for so many years. This is very good for the taxpayers all the way around. My only question is, financially, are we still doing okay doing that with budget-wise?
Yes, so we looked at that again this year, knowing what strains COVID has had on our community. And as of right now, yes, we were able to keep them low. That may change depending on where state and federal funding comes to us at the county to continue our operations.
Up to now. Terrific, thank you. We have a few minutes. The agenda, we whipped through that pretty fast. Why don't we take a short recess here until the director of PAC4 for Families shows up, and that'll be within about 10 minutes. So I hereby call a short recess.
She here? Go grab her.
Committee. And now I'd like to introduce and have Executive Director Rochelle Peterson from PAC4 for Families give us some updates. And hopefully in the updates, I see on the agenda as PAC4, F-O-R is really the number 4. And it's really
Oh, I see.
5, right? Do you want to tell us a little bit about that as well? Please proceed.
All right. Well, thank you for having me here today. I was just mentioning prior to coming back on the record, we have a lot of great stuff happening right now, so feel free to ask questions as I go. But the first part of your handout is really just kind of an overview of some of the dollars that went out from our agency to partner agencies this past year. And with COVID coming onto the scene in the early spring, we've had probably not as many of these smaller grants that have gone out to our partners because everybody's just been figuring out things as they go. But just as a highlight, some dollars went out to the Wilmer Alternative School, and that was exciting because the year before we also gave them some dollars to really do some community service projects in the community, and they just expanded on some of that this year early in 2020, just really getting a lot of their students involved in doing community outreach and doing some really positive things, and that's exciting to see. McRae Elementary, we're doing Kids in the Kitchen. They created a after-school program for kids that maybe didn't have places to go after school, and just really trying to teach them some good skills, nutrition, self-care, but also math and team building and things that they can take back. And they also created a little cookbook that they created and printed that up. And so lots of different little skills for that with that little program. And then $5,000 to Candiota County Family Services. And this is a really expansive little program with $5,000, but it's a training called Trust-Based Relational Intervention. And we're planning on offering 1 day, but we had such good turnout that we ended up having to offer 2 days. I think we had about 120 people between those 2 days attend. And this was written actually by social worker downstairs and talking about giving some real basic skills, so foster care families, adoptive families, but we had school personnel, social workers come, just real basic skills of how you work with kids that had a lot of trauma in their life. And so it was well received. I don't know how many people in their responses said it was probably the best training they'd ever attended, just because I think it was so practical and hands-on and gave some real skills. So the other piece of that, when I say additional 2-day training for school staff, because it was so well received, Candiota County wrote a grant, and then PAC for Families also wrote another grant to the Wilmer Foundation and received we kind of wrote it in tandem, but 2 separate applications. So we had a 2-day training specifically for school personnel, so not just school social workers, but teachers, paraprofessionals, anybody who comes in contact with the kids that are in the schools. And so we've done one of those sessions this summer, and then we were going to have a follow-up last week, but with COVID and the schedule, we're rescheduling for December for a 3-hour follow-up, and we're scheduling from 4 to 7 because that seems to be the best time that some of these folks can attend. So that'll be happening. And then we also had a 5-day training scheduled in October and November. But again, we're holding off because of COVID, because the trainer really feels like that needs to be face-to-face. So that may be summertime. I mean, who knows exactly? It's just indefinitely. But that is for therapists. And we've opened it up actually to public health nurses as well, because they do a lot of that work day to day in the homes with families and trying to do that. And public health was very interested in attending. And so that is above and beyond that $5,000 training that we've now applied for. So that actually really exploded into something big, and I think we're very proud of that and that partnership that we actually have specifically with the county. And then Early Childhood Committee, that with our 5 counties, Talking is Teaching campaign, and that when I say approximate is because we had given about $20,000 to the whole 5 counties, and collectively they buy resources, and we've had signs at parks, so even the park departments get these big signs out in the parks. You may have seen them in various spots at the clinics or in the grocery stores. Talking is Teaching, and it talks about singing and reading and storytelling. And every time you talk to your child, you're actually teaching them. And it was really, this is the 3rd year in a row that we've sponsored this, because it is so well received, and just really targeting those young, early childhood interactions with families and caregivers. That, I don't want to say it's the cell phone, but I mean, I know we talk about that all the time. If you go to a park, you're often seeing parents on the cell phone and the kids just walking around and not interacting. And so it's really an emphasis on interacting and everyday conversations and things that you are doing with your child that is actually teaching. And so that's been, very exciting campaign. So another dollar amount there to Candido County Family Services, and each of our 5 counties got dollars for this, and this was supportive mental health options for children. In the last couple years, or 3 years probably, we've had in our LAC group talking about respite care, and that respite dollars that come through down to the counties from the state sometimes are more restrictive than what the needs are, and they wish they could have some creativity in about how they're reaching families with their actual needs. And so each of the counties got a little pot of money that they are used discretionary for needs for families. And so especially with COVID, I know the county has said it's been very helpful, because there might be things that families are doing, distant learning that they need, transportation issues, and just anything that they can help alleviate some of the pressures that their families face, that maybe there's no other options or pot of money that can come for. So, and then social worker positions, again, we continue to fund 25% salaries and benefits for social worker at ACGC, and then one here in town at Lakeland Elementary. And the last one that we actually had last January, before everything really shut down, was Incredible Years classes, and that's just for scholarships for families that can't pay for necessarily those classes, and some lunch options. So, all right. And then these are some larger ones that kind of aren't very just county specific, but impact Candido County. And UCAP, Strengthening Caregiver and Family Engagement. This is one that has been very positive, and it's support for licensed child care providers, helping them get up and running, helping them have that support. We're seeing lots of daycare providers, because of the changing rules and regulations, that they're not continuing to provide childcare in the licensed setting. And so having some of that one-on-one support as they get going and go through their licensing requirements, and helping them get tools and resources that they need to be successful. So it's utilizing a relations-based professional. So it's a one-to-one support, and that they can go out, and that's been very successful for them. Woodland Centers, technology to increase services for youth with mental illness, and this is using some alpha STEM ideas and biofeedback machines that help kind of regulate stimulation. And this is utilized for treatment for youth who experience anxiety and depression. And so just knowing that I wrote in there, an evidence-based practice. It is something that isn't always readily available, but it has been studied, and being able to utilize, probably not as much because of COVID this year, because we don't have a lot of those face-to-face meetings at this point. But excited to let them use that machine and try to make some progress with the kids that have struggled in a lot of other just talk therapy options. So it's one more tool that can be utilized. And May is Mental Health Month. Again, our LAC, our Children's Local Advisory Board, had sponsored radio ads for May is Mental Health Month. And again, we were already into COVID, so we did 2 different ads through Lakeland Broadcasting, one very specifically just about May is Mental Health Month and reaching out to your friends, families, neighbors, and be supportive. And then one that was very specifically related to COVID and how it's really impacting everybody's mental health. And just a side comment, the interesting thing about COVID, I think, and mental health is, and I've heard some school administrators say this, and I've heard other professionals say this too, COVID and the stressors that it's put on all people has been a little bit of a door opener to talk about mental health. And I heard one principal of a local school said, I'm using the COVID card. And she said, because so often when I tried to talk about mental health in the schools, people would point fingers and say, it's those people. Those people have mental health concerns, not my kids or not the general public. But now people are starting to say, wow, stress and anxiety and mental health is affecting all of us. And it opens a door for a little bit more discussion on how stress and anxiety affects people and our mental health. So if there's one silver lining in some ways is that we're opening some discussion. So May is Mental Health Month. We really took the opportunity to talk about COVID and stress. And we did take the time to look at our website and to see when those ads were playing on the radio, we did have a lot of hits on our website of people coming and looking at community resources. And so don't know for sure if that was the impact, but there was a lot more activity during that month. And so hopefully we can continue to grow that information. And Connecting Families is an expansion of support services to families with special needs children. And this is, we call it Connecting Families. It was a program that when West Central Industries was sunsetting their TRCP, the Resource Center program, they called it, we took that on and kind of expanded it, but we changed the name of TRCP to Connecting Families because really that's been our goal and our mission is getting families to come together and to be a source of support for one another. So if anything, that's been one of my overarching goals is to help families connect with one another and become more of that informal support. I think as systems, we don't necessarily always do a great job in that continuity. We provide a lot of services, and then when they're done, they still are disconnected in many ways. And so by bringing families together, us bringing the resources to the groups so that they have some education, they have information that's accurate, but then they grow in their knowledge, and then they become a sense of support. And we've seen some just amazing situations where parents have supported one another, whether that's a parent attending an IEP meeting at their school for their child with another parent because they've experienced it already, and maybe we've provided some information about how to work with the schools effectively when it comes to IEPs. And so they go and support one another, or driving them to an appointment because they had no transportation to do a mental health consult appointment or something in St. Cloud or in the metro area. So just to see that positive energy grow with a little bit of support from an agency, that they can become very connected together. So hence why we chose that name, Connecting Families. It seems very simplistic, but effective. And so further in there, the grants received in 2020 that serve Candido County youth and families. And so these were the things that are just really getting going right at the moment. Last January, February, and March, we spent a lot of time writing some grants in the hopes that we might get one. And I've said this a few times, it's a little overwhelming, but really positive, because I'd say last year, 2019, we spent a lot of time evaluating, well, 2018 for that matter, who are we and what do we do? And really collectively looking at the needs of our communities, knowing we don't have endless amounts of funding, but how can we do that? How can we effectively support families, grow our support in our communities, reach the people we need to reach, and in what way do we need to reach them? So we spent a lot of time then writing these grants, January, February, March, and over the summer, I just kept getting notified that we would get another one and another one, and so these highlight some of those. The first one, that mental health awareness training, that one is a little unique that we actually wrote that in 2018 and didn't get funded. And then I got an email on a Friday morning saying that, could you use this money if we gave it to you now? And ironically, this is kind of a online platform of mental health information. And I think this one came in May, the notification, and so with COVID happening, it was very timely. And I did wonder if that's why, because our proposal was an online platform, but I was told it was not. It was just coincidence. But these have a goal of just increasing the capacity of our member schools to gain competency to manage critical conversation in the area of mental health. So this is some of the feedback we've been getting. Our schools are overwhelmed. Teachers are not mental health practitioners, yet they have to deal with this information all the time. And so hence we use this platform called Cognito. And it's an evidence-based virtual platform, so they can go in and go through scenarios and do these interactions and learn on their own. And I will say that Cognito, the Minnesota Department of Health, sponsored one platform, because there's several different platforms, but they provided a suicide prevention platform for the entire state of Minnesota this year. And so that's one piece, but we have access to many pieces, the trauma-informed, the early childhood education piece. And I've had multiple conversations with the Department of Health, and they're very excited about the fact that we have this with our data after 4 years or 3 years, that they would like to propose that the whole state of Minnesota get access to everything that we have access to. So they're very excited to see our data after 3 years, because they can track how many times teachers are logging in. This actually has a parent component, so when you would go to your school's website and log into Cognito, you can just say you're a parent, and it keeps track of how many parents are logging in. So it's very exciting, because they are trying to implement this statewide, and we have 3 years of data that we can provide afterwards. This also has a peer-to-peer component, you can see in goal 2, and we're excited about that, because that's one thing that schools have been saying. It'd be very nice to support kids in getting their own information so that they can support one another and to get the correct, accurate information. And we've been working on that the last couple of years. We have a peer leadership conference that we hold in town here, and working on helping kids get that up and running in their school, and this will be another piece that can help that. And then increase understanding by parents and school personnel. And what our plan was when we wrote this 2 years ago was to be able to go to conferences at all of our school buildings and have our booth and have information and share, have these one-to-one interactions. Well, again, obviously that's not going to happen, but one exciting thing that is evolving right now is conversations with different community members or community agencies and how we can do this. And we're trying to create a virtual library. And so getting local folks, because there's some schools that are doing some amazing things when it comes to mental health and teaching the kids and families. And we'd like to create a a library, like YouTube videos, even if that's teaching some skills, a 3-minute video that they can click on and watch, or a 2-minute relaxation video, and we'd have practitioners doing those things. So we've worked with Woodland centers right now, and we're talking about ways to videotape them and doing a relaxation activity or explaining some basic things about mental health, and then sharing where the resources are in the community. So this could just keep growing, and so it would be a goal out of this grant, but adapting where we are right now that could be impactful down the road and not just in a grant period. So again, sustainability in mind. How do we do something that can continue on? All right. So Family Permanency Grant, Department of Human Services. So this one actually is a state grant, and this came actually, it was a quick turnaround to apply for a grant. Actually, it came as a request from Jenny, knowing that adoption, kinship placement, foster families were struggling, and staff are struggling to support those families. And so Jenny reached out, which I think is a prime example of our partnership with as the collaborative, and what we do is somebody reaching out and saying, we have a need here, and I saw this grant, and could we do this? So we quickly wrote up this grant, and so this would be for our 5-county area, but we were able to hire a couple people that basically are liaisons between the county and these families, and helping them with resources that they need to take care of these children that come into their homes, whether it's foster or a kinship placement or adoption. Just because paperwork gets done and the kids are placed that's usually when a lot of this work starts. And to having somebody be that bridge a little bit, and not being able to give the one-to-one time that they need, because it can be very stressful, and to understand the behaviors that some of these children come in with. And we hired 2 people that have their own experiences. One person we hired actually is raising her niece in her own home. It's her sister's child. And one other person is an adoptive parent who adopted a child at 4 years old, who now is a teenager. So they come with their own personal experience, and that can relate to these families and understand what they're going through. So they will offer one-to-one, and again, try to deliberately connect these families together so they can become a source of support for one another, but have underlying professional support to back that up as they do that transition. So this is a 2-year grant, and I'm very hopeful that, of course, we could get refunding so that it would be at least a 4-year grant. 2-year grants are never wonderful, just because you barely can get up and running without turning around. So, right. And then Journey to Independence. This one you may have heard about. It's actually for several years we've gone to the legislature to ask for funding on a rural demonstration project of working with youth in transition. So young adults transitioning into adulthood, going from maybe children's mental health system to the adult mental health system, can be very challenging. And every year we'd get it right to the end of the cycle, and we'd testify, and it would get approved, and it would go to the end, and then it would be cut probably right at the last approval. And the last time I heard something from the Senate committee, they said, this is a great idea. Prevention is usually just not what we fund. And maybe if you could find some other funding and come back to us and show some data first, which is what we were asking of the state to help us get some data. So I just told our board and those even sitting on our CEO board, saying I think we need to try a different avenue. I think 3 years of effort right now is it takes a lot of time to go down and testify and get those bills and and things. So we wrote this grant, and we did get it, and so I'm very excited. This is a 4-year grant, which is what we were proposing with the state, and we're very excited. We have 3 people coming on and a coordinator to talk with all 5 counties again, but just really, second paragraph there, developing greater self-sufficiency and independence while emphasizing the role of the parent and guardians in guiding and support. So this has a role, a key family person, because we know that it takes the entire family to be on board in different ways. So we have a family support person, and then we have the folks for working with the youth to try to get on the same page, goal setting. The end of that paragraph, it talks about employment, education, housing, life skills, and wellness, all of those key things that they need. And trying to help them when they're 18, when they maybe perhaps think they don't need those things. So, I mean, that's the trick as well, is that a lot of young people, 18, 19, don't think they need the help. So it's a very deliberate path and education process that they need. So anyway, the title Journey to Independence is the title we've used for that. And the last one that we have is Partners for Success, and this maybe has been on, not in this particular format, but on the radar as we've had drug-free communities here in Candioi County and different grants helping with prevention of drug use and abuse. And as there were some transitions happening in Candioi County, Renville County was also coming to an end. But then in Yellow Medicine County, we've had some issues too, that they lost some of their funding and have applied a couple times and weren't successful in their application efforts. And we actually applied last year on behalf of a couple counties and were unsuccessful. In fact, not one grant was awarded in the state of Minnesota last year. And with all the changes in Candioi County, we decided to come together, so Renville, Candioi, and Yellow Medicine County, and apply one application. So this is a 5-year grant to increase prevention infrastructure to counteract the onset of substance abuse. Knowing these funds aren't going to be around forever, we know that. So this really has the emphasis of sustainability in mind. The evaluation to look at what are the most effective sustainability strategies to keep numbers low in our county for use. And Yellow Medicine is an interesting comparison because having a few years of not having any prevention efforts in their county, their numbers were increasing. Even the first year, you could see an uptick in some of their smoking and drinking numbers in their county. And it was on their radar as well. And so it's interesting. But we know we can't maintain some of those high level of efforts that when you get a federal grant and there is lots of dollars to push in, but you know when it's been effective and you have a steady group of people and you have a steady message that you can maintain a certain level of that effort. And so this grant, we have 5 years to really look at that and parcel out what are those efforts that we really should look at maintaining and at what level in our schools and communities and families. And so this one has, we look at 5 stages, and so assessment, which we're beginning that right now. So how ready are your communities to look at this issue, and where's their viewpoints on it? So we're just beginning that right now. Capacity development, planning, implementation, and evaluation. So over the 5 years, we want to do these things and make sure that when this federal money goes away in 5 years, are we in a really good place to maintain, and what would it take? And what are those key pieces that should be maintained? Sometimes we can't do everything, but what would be the most effective strategy to look at prevention? And so Candy, Ojai County and Renville County especially have a really strong coalition going and keeping that moving. Yellow medicine, of course, just has to be reestablished. There's been a lot of efforts that have maintained on their own in that county, but we, I think, feel very strongly that we have already a good framework going, but now we get to tweak it and help make a sustainability plan with that. So those are exciting. So we have 4 of those that are really just getting going. They actually just began in the last couple months. So we're in the baby stages.
Okay. Commissioner Masson.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, either Jenny or Rochelle, with the talking is teaching, do you recall, up to 3 years old, I think, the number of words that from low to high that people hear, that the kids hear? It was striking. I don't recall
Yeah.
it, but it was. Do you recall? what that
Thousands,
was?
I can't remember. It's in like some kids with, 16,000 words versus, several hundred words, and the difference and the trajectory that has on their education. Yeah, it's astounding.
I seem to recall it's about a tenfold difference from the
Yeah.
top to the bottom, and it's clearly evidence-based, as you point out, and clearly exponentially increasing at that point. And it's such an easy thing to do, and yet in our society, as you point out, with the technologies and so on, we're not using those verbalizations, even to the point of music. Anything that we're hearing as far as the words. So I just, strongly support that and encourage to continue. I know that some of the school districts that have worked with that, I think Annie Tepfer worked with Renville County specifically as far as the report. That was at Public Health here maybe a couple of years ago. But just a phenomenal success with that. And I just also want to emphasize and to support very strongly what you said, Rochelle, as far as the mental health. It has been anecdotally stated that the scientists that are working with and making suggestions and decisions and so on, as far as whether it's restrictions or dial back or whatever, that they're doing it only based on science. And I want to emphatically state that, as you know, I sit on the advisory committee with the Department of Health as far as the COVID, and we meet every 2 weeks and have for months now. Seemingly it's years, Larry, but that's just the way it is. But I can adamantly state that Commissioner Malcolm and Assistant Commissioner Epidemiologist Chris Ayresman and Margaret Kelly, every single meeting, whether it is with the medical professionals, Dr. Michael Osterholms, or the Regents people, or University of Minnesota, throughout the Nurses Association, mental health, mental well-being is talked about every single time. They are very aware of the stresses, and we're trying our best to balance, trying our best to protect and educate, but also understanding the breadth and depth and the continuation. There are people that thought it was going to be over 6 months ago, 2 months ago, 4 months ago, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We know that we're in this for several months yet, several months before it's going to be done. But mental health, I use mental well-being as probably a more inclusive term, understanding the stressors that are there. We're seeing in all of us. Larry, you mentioned fatigue many times, and we've all talked about the COVID fatigue. It's far more than just the results of the virus itself. It is the results of just the ongoing anxiety, the unknowns, and continuation. So I want to make that very clear that is not avoided, and it is not just we're doing it by the data. We're trying to make that balance, and it's a difficult situation. So, but I do appreciate, and I know clearly, well, Pact 4 was started with the SAMHSA grant. That's what started, was the mental health. And at that point in time, Rochelle, you were not involved in the circle, but you were certainly involved at that point. We hadn't even scratched the surface compared to what we are today. And this has been a very, very successful adventure. And I can say that in the strongest terms, because it was an adventure. We didn't know. So again, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Commissioner Mattson, yeah, I'd probably like to add to that. Commissioner Mattson goes back a few years. Pact 4 was in the 90s, it formed. And looking back into the 90s, that was when there's all these silos, and there still are, but to find a way to break through that. And then also every county, every school, was just standalone. And the opportunity for PAC4 to come along, and the state had some grants to do that. And we were so unique, and Commissioner Masson was on the board at that time, and to have that insight and forward-looking about, let's work on a collaborative. And most people didn't even know what the word collaborative meant back then, and still even nowadays they don't understand it. They think it's just compromise or cooperation, and those are important parts of it, but it's even bigger than that. But to work together, and it's a unique joint powers. I'm not sure there is one like that around the state, that we can go together with 5 of the counties, and we have all these other different agencies, nonprofit agencies involved. We have churches, we have consumers involved on making decisions to help and build up bridges between agencies and fill out the gaps that we don't have. And it is so unique. And like you mentioned, the big grant back then, I think it was about $7 million, got it going. And what a difference that made in having a full-time person looking at outcomes. And I just can think over the years of all the children that have been helped. And it's really tough to have a count of those numbers right now, but it has made a difference. Are the problems all solved? Like Commissioner Masson said, we got a heck of a long ways to go. But we're keep working at it, and we're working together between the agencies. You mentioned the school social work program. I have a question about that, but PAC4 for Families is so supportive because schools in the past didn't have the extra funds for a school social worker. And PAC4 came along and gave some incentive dollars and a plan that you start a social worker, we'll give so much money this year, maybe so much money next year, a little bit less, and you take it on eventually. And the schools started to build more and more social workers. And now it's my understanding that PAC4 is still helping fund for social workers. And one of my questions is, are they currently funding most of the school districts in our 5-county region
We
in
have
some way?
9 positions now, and a lot of that has changed because of LCTS dollars. I mean, there were, I think, at the top, probably about 15, and they paid the full 100% of the salary, and then it went to 75%, and then to 50%, and now 25%. But that really is those local collaborative time study dollars. In the late 90s, 2000s, we were drawing down millions at that time, and now typically it's about $300,000 a year. So you bring in that and cover, the salaries and things, and some of those collaborative dollars are used, for some of those little grants on the top of that page that we use. So hence why it's 25%. And I know there's discussion about, do we keep doing this? Is 25%, good, or do we change that a little bit and support the schools in a different way? So I will tell you, I think one of our biggest ongoing discussions is how do we best support the schools? Back 20 years ago when we started doing that, it was through the school social workers because they didn't have them. Now a lot of that is established. So what is the best use of those dollars? Is it, I'll just tell you right now, just an example of schools that I think will be very interesting because it's been something I've thought about for a while, is the schools. You talk to teachers and they're saying, gosh, I see little Tommy and I don't know what to do, and I see this and I don't know who to ask either. And in Renville County right now, some of their CARES dollars, we're supporting a program where we have an email account with a licensed clinical person where they can just email, they can have a discussion with that person, we're gonna do some little trainings, we're gonna do some little Zoom sessions where people can jump in. But we're getting a ton of inquiries from school staff on that way, just to support their own mental health, because they are feeling like they're kind of breaking at this point. So we've talked about that, like what's the best way to support the schools right now? Is it the extra dollars for the positions, or is it something different now because the world looks a little differently than it did 20 years ago? So.
Well, very excellent information, Rochelle. I also like to add, and I have a question, would I be off base saying over the years, PAC-4 for Family has brought in well over $10 million into our region for mental health services.
Oh, I think back, so.
Is it a low figure?
Those that didn't know, I worked for PACT4 back in early 2000s, and so that was kind of the big, those, some big federal grants, millions at that point. And so, even just these 4 is going to be
And it's
millions.
so unique, being a 5-county collaborative right now, that we can apply for these kind of grants, and the federal government looks at that, and they think, oh, 5 counties, and that's, I think, is a real plus, that we're getting the grants, versus if you're one county, or you're just one school, or one public health agency, or whatever. We can do this together, and we can show the outcomes, and we're saving really property tax dollars in doing this, from the point of view that children's mental health is very expensive when you start talking about treatment and placement, and most of those dollars go back out of the county levy dollars that we have to pay for those. So this all helps that, as much as we can do in prevention and or even help along the way. So a couple, maybe one or question more if anybody has, otherwise we're kind of running out of time. Rochelle, anything else you want to say? Or?
Well, I was going to piggyback off the savings. I know the grant that I mentioned that Jenny had come to us about applying for, that's one thing. We're seeing disrupted placements. So we're seeing even grandmas or grandpas or aunts and uncles taking in some of their family members even, but not having the capacity to raise them because what they're entering their homes with and the needs. And we were saying, boy, if we could actually keep that placement intact, hopefully we're saving some resources, and we're saving disrupted placements, because we know the data. Every time a child has to go from one home to another home to another home, that's detrimental, in many ways. And even if you can do that, so we talk about that cost savings,
Okay.
that's a
All right, thank you.
benefit.
Any other questions? All right, well, thank you
Thank
very
you
much
very
for
much
coming.
for
and
giving the
us
time.
having-
So,
Okay,
all right, thank
well, thank you. And Jenny, anything else that you want to update us on?
Nope, I think due to time, we can save it for next time.
Okay, and that ends our agenda, and I hereby